Hey guys, Kick Creep here. Today, we're gonna try not to get hit by a falling tree in high wind gusts. So today, we are going to be talking about level 7. And not this level 7, this level 7. This is the level 7 Alpha High Loft Vest. Now, in both the PCU and the Equix Gen 3 systems used by the US military, they follow the 7 level layering system that we've talked about extensively on this channel. Level 7 refers to the high loft insulation layer or the static insulation layer, and there are a few different flavors of level 7 in the PCU Block 1 and 2 systems. So first, of course, we have the level 7 type 1 belay jacket, and then we have the level 7 type 2 monster parka, and then we have, of course, the high loft pants, and then the high loft insulated vest. Now, I just did a video on level 3, which is the insulated mid layer. That is a layer that is supposed to work inside of your system, whereas the vest is an insulated outer layer for the most part, both of which are active insulation layers. That means you can wear them during varying levels of activity in different temperature ranges. But today, I'm gonna give you my thoughts as to why the high loft vest is the ultimate active insulation layer. So the vest, much like any piece of clothing, is going to be subject to trends, right? What is coming in and out of style. And the low loft puffer is definitely what is in style right now. This here is the Arc'teryx Atom hoodie. I talked about this in my level 3 video. Having this shell fabric here is awesome because it is something that can be thrown over top of your shell in order to quickly add insulation as well as maintaining your weather protection. But the issue with a long sleeve is the fact that it is going to trap a lot more heat than something like a vest. On something like this Arc'teryx Atom hoodie, we have these fleece-lined stretch panels here on the side. Those aren't just there to give you better range of motion because this is a nylon shell. Those are also there to try to vent and dump some heat. That way, as an active insulation layer, this is not going to trap too much heat and overheat you. But with a vest, it is going to leave your arms completely open. That way you can dump a lot of heat off of your arms and those armpits, that very notoriously hot and wet part of your body. And it's going to insulate your core, which houses your very important vital organs. Make sure that those are warm and pumping warm blood into those extremities that you now have exposed. And like I said, the vest is really not the trend. These low loft puffers are very in style. Everyone's making some variation of something like the Arc'teryx Atom hoodie. Even the US military, like I talked about with the CTAP system, is making their own variation of the Arc'teryx hoodie style. So nowadays, you really only see the vest being worn by like finance or tech bros. I think I saw the Patagonia fleece vest being referred to as the uniform of tech bros. I thought that was super funny because Patagonia was actually at one point putting company or corporate logos on their vests. So people typically associate vests with like nerds, I guess. So for a while now, the vest has been the ultimate active mid layer for getting you from your studio apartment to the subway and then from the subway to your office building. But I think that the outdoor recreation world needs to take back the vest. So I've had a PCU vest for a few years now, and I didn't use my original one very much. I featured it in my PCU layering guide video, but aside from that, I haven't used it too much because I didn't really see a lot of use for it. That was until I got this one. So I originally had the Block 1 or Generation 2 issued vest, but I have since moved on to the Block 0 or Gen 1 vest that was made by Orc Industries in the early 2000s. And I'll get more in depth into why I like this one in a bit. So this might just be a me thing, but I really like the vest as an active insulation layer because, again, it has a shell fabric. I can throw it on over top of my shell, unlike with a fleece where you have to add yet another shell on top of that to give you weather protection. If I do end up throwing something like the Arc'teryx hoodie on, I then lose access to these shoulder pockets. And I know that sounds a little dumb, but I do keep some important things in there. Things like, chapstick. In this one, I actually have a little microfiber attached to it, so that way I can clean my lenses off on, my glasses or my GoPro, because I do have to film things now. Got to think about that. I also like to keep things like snacks or, my car keys, and, important things like your Zinnichinos. So that's why I personally really like the vest. Now I can also see this thing having a lot of use in the military because they typically have, IR markers, unit patches, or ranks on their shoulders on these Velcro panels. Me, it doesn't have a lot of use because I just got, you know, dumb little patches on there that I like, you know, a little US flag patch that I got from Venture Surplus. And that brings me to the sponsor of this video, which is Venture Surplus. I've been working with them for a while now, and they're always sending out really cool gear for me to test out. They also gave us a discount code, so if you use discount code KitCreep at checkout, you get 10% off your entire order. They have a ton of awesome cold weather stuff. They actually have a ton of Beyond Clothing, and Beyond Clothing makes excellent cold weather gear. And while they don't have any level 7A vests, they do have a bunch of different flavors of the level 7 on their site. So make sure you head on over there, get some new additions to your cold weather system, use that discount code. I don't get any kickbacks from it. It's really just to give back to you guys so that you guys can start building out and, you know, dialing in your cold weather systems. So thank you to Venture Surplus for sponsoring this video. Now, the vest is not just in the system to be used as an active mid layer. It has a secondary purpose, which is to increase the warmth value of the level 7 belay jacket. So if you're wearing your big puffy belay jacket and it's not keeping you warm enough, you know, of course you could throw on a fleece or one of your long sleeve mid layers, but it just adds so much more bulk and material onto your arms. So by adding the vest to keep your core a little bit warmer, and then your arms have less fabric and bulk on them, well, it makes it a lot easier to move around and get things done around camp. Level 7 the long way. Level 7 the long way. What we have here is the level 7 type 2. So this is referred to as the monster parka. And as you can see here, you know, I've got my type 1 over here, which is the standard belay jacket, right? It's just a jacket. This is more of a parka and a monster parka, if you will. So this is a size medium. And you can see how gigantic this thing is. Now, it does have, again, one of those waist cinch adjustments, so you can take it in. That way it's not so big and open on the inside, but it can only do so much. Even though this thing is so gigantic, it might not actually make you feel any warmer if it has too much dead space, because dead space is very inefficient. The lofted insulation is what is supposed to be trapping and slowing the loss of heat. That dead space is just going to create more air that your body needs to heat up, making your body work harder, and it's far less efficient. So the type 2 is actually supposed to be worn with body armor in mind. It's supposed to be able to go over all of your big bulky body armor or even a day pack. But the thing is, if you aren't wearing body armor, if you're not wearing a day pack, then this thing might actually be a pretty inefficient warming layer. So of course, if you're carrying this absolutely massive parka, you're not going to be carrying the type 1 as well. That's just a waste of space and weight in your pack. So what you can do is you can use the level 7 alpha vest in order to create a little bit more volume underneath the type 2 parka, therefore reducing all of that dead space and increasing your overall warmth. And that's predominantly how I've used the vest over the past few years. It was just to increase the warmth value of my belay jacket when just working around camp. So when it comes to cooking food or starting a fire, anywhere there's going to be embers that could burn a hole in your warmest insulation jacket, you don't want to get holes burned into that. And the same thing when it comes to chopping wood or using saws, any kind of sharp objects, you don't want to punch holes in that and allow that insulation to come out. But this season, I've actually been using it a lot more as an active insulation layer. So I just put out a video where I was in the Adirondacks doing some hiking, and there were like 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And I brought this level 7A vest instead of my Arc'teryx Atom hoodie or a fleece. So once we got above the tree line, there was no trees to protect us from those insane winds. And I felt just fine. You know, my face hurt really bad, but the vest did a really good job of keeping my core warm, and it just did a great job. Even though my arms only had a lightweight base layer and my level 5 shell, my arms didn't feel cold. My core felt nice and warm, but I didn't feel like I was overheating because, of course, my armpits were there to help dump some heat, and it was great. Now, the other application where the vest really shines is ice climbing, because, of course, you are using your arms a lot when you're ice climbing, and you're going to be switching tools from side to side. You're dealing with ropes in your face, especially if you're top roping like me, but you do end up exerting yourself quite a bit when you're climbing. So the vest did an excellent job of freeing up my arms when I'm working with these big sharp ice tools, making sure that my arms are not just free to breathe, but also don't have a ton of bulky stuff on them for my tools to get stuck on. And that's why I think the vest is the ultimate active insulation layer. I was very nice and warm and extremely effective because my arms were free to do their job. So next I want to talk about my vest and why I like this specific one. Now, like I said before, I had the Block 1 or Gen 2 vest. Now, the Block 0 and Block 1 vests use the same materials. They both use Next-Tech fabric and Loft insulation, which is my favorite because I've been using it a lot because of the PCU system and the Equic system. They both use those materials and they are excellent. The Next-Tech fabric does an excellent job of shedding water, and the Loft is extremely warm and packable. But the Block 1 version, the Gen 2, that one is made by Haley's. That is a full-length zipper, and it also has two big pockets that are identical to the Type 1 and 2 front pockets, and then it also has one very large internal mesh pocket, and it's only on one side, which I think is a little strange. The Block 1 was very big and bulky. It also had a very big bulky collar with like a Waffle grid fleece going around it. I didn't see a lot of use for that because I'm wearing so many goddamn collars already that it didn't really make a big difference to me. But in the Block 1's defense, I did get it in a size medium long. And that's because that's the size that I prefer for all of my surplus layers that I get, because I have big, long orangutan arms. But what I realized with the vest is that I don't really have a super long torso. So it came really far down on my torso. Now, I played with the idea of getting a size medium regular, and that would shorten it up a little bit. But the Block 1 has a little bit of a dip or a tail in the back just to cover your ass a little bit. And so when you're bending over, it still gives you some insulation, makes sure that you don't have any gap between, your top layer and your pants. And that's a nice feature, but in my opinion, I didn't think that it was going to integrate very well with my harness. Now, down on the harness, I have a lot of very important equipment. I have my third hand, I have my belay device, and then I have some ice screws, and I also like to clip my ice tools onto the back of it. And I really just didn't want that extra material in the back that was going to interfere with my harness and my ability to get things off of my harness. I didn't want my insulation layer to actually interfere with my ability to take things on and off of my harness. So I actually got rid of the Block 1 and I ended up getting the Block 0 vest. This thing is the perfect length. So this one does not have a dip in the back. It is pretty even all the way around, and that's great because when I wear my harness, it doesn't cover any of my devices or carabiners, and it stays pretty out of the way. And if I really need to, I can even just roll it up inside of itself in order to further clear my harness if it's starting to ride up a bit. But my level 5 is a size long, and it extends quite a ways down. And that's actually nice because that means the level 5 can tuck underneath my climbing harness and make sure that it doesn't lift up and give me gaps in my shell. And then the vest can fit over top of the harness and make sure that it doesn't impede my ability to grab gear and take gear on and off the harness. Now, the Block 0, as you can see, is not a full-length zipper. It is actually like a half-length zipper, but what I will say is that in high winds, a half-length or three-quarter-length zipper is actually easier to put on, because when you're trying to get one arm through and you're trying to get the other side when the wind's really picking up like it is now, it's really difficult. So I don't think that the half-length zipper is a downgrade from the full-length, because it does actually have some good application in an alpine cold weather environment. Now, the only downside that I see to the half-length vest is that I can't access those pockets on the level 5. Now, I can lift it up like that, but that could actually end up dumping some heat, or I could try to go in from the top, but that's kind of awkward. But what I like to do when I go ice climbing, and what I did last time I went, is I take off my hiking gloves that are probably nice and sweaty from the approach in. I throw those inside of the level 5, and then I throw my vest on over it. That way, once it's time to hike out and I take the vest off, I can take out those hiking gloves that I'm not gonna need until later. And by then they're hopefully cooked dry. So that is a really neat little feature. And also because there is no falling zipper and it's just insulation all the way around, there's really no places for excess heat to dump out, and it keeps your core really nice and warm. Now, I definitely wouldn't want the zipper to be any shorter, and that's just because it just fits over my helmet. And that's what I needed to do, right? I don't want to have to take my helmet on and off to throw on an insulation layer because, again, the helmet is a life-saving device, whether it's in the military and you're wearing a ballistic helmet, or if you're climbing and you're wearing a climbing helmet, because there is always the risk of rocks and ice falling on top of you, or just while you're fidgeting with things and trying to throw layers on, falling and hitting your head. That's a pretty quick way to die. Now, there is one little pocket on the Block Zero vest up here. And that's there so I can throw in something like, you know, a little lightweight hat, or maybe some glove liners to put into my climbing gloves or belay gloves. So it's nice that it's there, but it's definitely not as feature packed as the Block One, which has two big pockets on the front and then a nice little cooking pocket on the inside. Now, what I really didn't like about the Block One vest is it had the, you know, the Haley's cinch adjustment around the waist. So to tighten the waist around you, you had to reach into the pockets and pull at it. So you had a cinch adjustment in the right pocket and then one in the left pocket. So they would only adjust one side of the vest. And that was annoying, not just because sometimes it felt a little uneven and it made me get a little OCD, but it also has this weird issue where it kind of starts to pull up the middle because it is running up to those pockets. And I didn't like that. So I like how on the Block Zero, it is a simple cinch cord adjustment on one side, and then you just pull it once, and then you can tuck that strand up into the vest, and now you're sealed off from the bottom, and that's going to trap more heat and not let spin drift and wind get up inside and rip all that nice warm heat away from you. So I'm a big fan of that. The only issue is you really have to make sure that this little guy is tucked in there, because I did have an issue in the Adirondacks where this got caught on something, and I tried moving, and I was like, what's going on? And that was stuck on a branch. So you really got to make sure that that thing is nice and secure up inside of the vest. Now, I do own another vest, and that is the Patagonia Micro Puff. Now, this is actually the vest that was used in Patagonia's Mars system. Well, not the exact vest. Those things are extremely expensive. But this is the commercial version of the Micro Puff that was used in Patagonia's very own cold weather system that they issued to the military. This little Micro Puff vest is a very lightweight and very minimalist kind of vest. It's very old school. It's definitely not a high loft vest like with the level 7 alpha. And these are nice because it's just a little bit lower bulk, highly packable. These do feature a full zip on the front, which is nice. You know, I know a lot of people really prefer the full zip. I'm honestly a big fan of this thing. I got it for pretty cheap on Poshmark. So because surplus vests are not super plentiful, I will recommend something like these Patagonia light loft puffers or their fleece vests. Now, I don't use a fleece vest. I've never owned one, but I will say that Mark Twight, the mastermind behind the PCU system, wrote in his book, Extreme Alpinism, that he would actually climb with a fleece vest. So that was his vest of choice back when he was a big climber. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, of course, in the military, they're always wearing body armor or some sort of load-carrying equipment up on their torso, so I can understand why the vest has fallen out of fashion with the military, and we'll talk more about that later. But for civilians, outdoor recreationalists, the vest is a turnkey solution for a lot of different activities. Now, speaking of the military, aside from being able to display all of your unit, rank, and ID markers, I don't see the high loft vest having a ton of use, and I think that's why it did not get adopted into the Gen 3 Equix system. Now, in the PCU system, it made more sense because, you know, back in the early 2000s, body armor was really coming up on the rise. It wasn't as standardized as it is now. So nowadays, the high loft vest doesn't make a ton of sense. And the reason is body armor, big IOTV vests, MSVs, whatever they're using now, it is going to compress all of the insulation of this vest. And of course, the lofted material relies on it being lofted in order to insulate. So if you compress it, it's going to lose almost all of its insulation value. and then there's really no point. I have seen companies like Massive make a high loft vest. Those look pretty cool. I have seen some UCP pattern fleece vests, and I can see a fleece vest having a little bit more utility because as we talked about in my level 3 video, fleece is less compressible. So that doesn't just make it less packable, but it makes it more sturdy. So that way, if you are going to compress it, it's going to retain a lot more of its insulation value. So with body armor, I can see where a fleece would really come in handy. I think the Waffle top is probably, your best bet because it is so breathable and it is fleece. So it is going to insulate your core a bit more, but the high loft vest, not so much. So that's really about it for me. So let me know what you guys think about the vest and how you use it or would use it in your system. Let me know if you think that these things are slept on or if there's a good reason why they went out of style. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. Don't worry, my full level 7 breakdown will be dropping. I just didn't want to spend, 20 minutes of the breakdown talking about just the vest. I didn't want the video to be like an hour long, so I figured that I would just take some time to specifically talk about the vest because I had a lot to talk about because I've learned a lot using this thing over the past few adventures that I've had. And then of course, after we talk about level 7, the only one that we have left is the level 5, and I am super excited for that video, and you should be too. So I hope you guys enjoyed, stay cool, and have a great winter.